always titles his messages. I remember one time he preached a sermon called "It's Chicken Dinner Time," and it was a good one. But the title of my sermon, "Walking by Faith Through the Storms of Life," and I think that'll apply to just about anybody as you go and the years go on. I'm going to start with the verse, 2 Corinthians 5, verse 7. Says, "For we walk by faith, and not by sight." It's simple, it's short, it's sweet, and it's to the point. For we walk by faith, not by sight. I find myself quoting that verse time and time and time again as I go out through life. And you can all be seated. So first off, what is faith? Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 says that now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You know, everything around us might look bad. You might see all the struggles. You might not have the job. You might not have the money. You can't pay attention to that. It's not your eyes that you truly see with, but it's the heart that lies within you. If you see with your heart, it doesn't matter the size of the storm. It doesn't matter how high that mountain is. If you walk by faith, you're going to get there. It might take a while, but if you walk by faith, one day at a time, one of these days, you're going to reach the top of that mountain, and you'll be better and you'll be stronger than you ever were before. Now, I know some of us in here are baseball fans. Are there any Cubs fans in here? I'm a Cardinals fan, but I tell you what, I wish I had the faith of a Cubs fan, because every single year it's saying, oh, this is the year. This is the year, and they've been waiting since 1908. But, you know, as much as a Cardinal fan as I sometimes dislike Cubs fans, even though I know I have family, Cubs fan number one, I admire them at the same time because, you know, even though we haven't won this World Series since 1908, they're not going to let that get them down. They're going to keep on walking by faith. They're going to keep believing this is the year. And in life, that's what we have to do. You can't just get down when everything looks bad. And, you know, I'm probably just beating the hammer down on this one verse, but it's so true. Walk by faith. Walk by faith, and you're always going to make it through. Now, I've got a story to tell, and I remember telling Mike this a couple years back, and then I was going through some tough times, and this is before, and it's probably been 2 years or so. I went down there in the church, and he dragged me out of the back and prayed for me, and I told him afterward, yeah, you know, I think I got a word, and I told him this story, and, you know, even then, I still wrestled with it for probably a year or two, but the story of the old dirt road and the river. I know some of y'all might know, we got about 1,000-acre farm over at Farina, and there's this bottom ground down there, and if you look, there's an old dirt road that leads back, and it just looks like it goes to nowhere. And, you know, about 2 years ago, I thought of this, because we were going through a really, really tough drought, and you go down this road, and you think, well, there can't be anything back there. Everything looks bad, the crops around it are all withered and dry and dead. You get back to the end of that lane and take a left, and there's a beautiful river down there. I mean, absolutely beautiful Amber River. And, you know, it just kind of goes back to that. You see all the, you know, the death and everything around you. You can't let that bring you down. If you just keep on walking, you're going to get there eventually. And there's countless stories of faith in the Bible. Faith in the book of Daniel. Some of you might know the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the fiery furnace. And I really hope I didn't mess up any of those names. But as the story goes, those three were cast in the fiery furnace by the king. And I love this one verse. Daniel 3:17 says, "If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king." They're talking to king. You know what? I've got faith in Jesus. I've got faith that he's going to deliver me from this. They weren't afraid. And the next verse in that story, if you read on, when it gets to Daniel 3:25, I love how it says this. He answered and said, "Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God." That shows you that no matter what, he's always with you. You might not be holding on. You might be going through hell, but he's always going to be right there holding your hand to take you through it. Amen, amen. Another story in the book of Daniel is Daniel and lions den. I'm sure we've all heard this one. Daniel was cast in the den of lions, not by the king's will, but by the will of the king's men. And then the story goes, the king fasted and prayed for him. Went to the den in the morning, and Daniel was still alive. Daniel had faith. They all had faith. You go on, you can find it in the book of Mark. And this is one I love, completely random thought, but I love that my mom and dad gave somebody. Paul Matthew, Andrew. It's a good thing. I'll just take a little bit and appreciate them. If it wasn't for my family, I would not even be here. Thank God for them. But in Mark 25, Mark chapter 5, verse 25, you read the story of the woman touching the garment of Jesus, which I find one of the best stories in all the Bible. It says, and a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things and many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing better, but rather grew worse. And when she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind, and touched his garment. For she said, if I may but touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. Sometimes all you've got to do is just reach out and touch him. Touch his hand. It doesn't take a whole lot, but just say, Jesus, I need some help. Just reach out and touch him, and he's going to pull you through it. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press and said, who touched my clothes? And his disciples said unto him, thou seest the multitude thronging thee, and sayest thou, who touched me? And he looked round about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him, and told him all the truth. And he said unto her, daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace and whole of thy plague. You know, you might be broken. I'll personally attest to it. The things of this world are going to break you. This life is not easy. It's never been easy. I remember my cousin Terry, before he passed, said in a sermon, the things of this life are not fair. If you think the books are going to balance at the end of every day, my friend, you're wrong. For life is not fair, but that's the beauty of it. Life's not fair. Even though life's not fair, though, we've got a king that's always going to help us. He's always going to lift us up. If you have faith, he's going to put your broken pieces back together and make you whole again. And a little bit further on in this passage, you hear the daughter of Jairus. And in that passage, it goes like this. While he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said, thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further? As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he saith unto the ruler of the synagogue, be not afraid, only believe. This goes back again to the faith. You know, he saw that that girl was dead, but he knew he could heal it, that Jesus could heal him, or could heal her. And through Jesus, I mean, he knew the healing would come. He just had faith. He believed. He didn't care that he saw this dead girl. He knew if he went to Jesus, that she was going to rise up and walk again. And then one last Bible verse story. The book of Matthew. I know I'm kind of rushing through this, but I won't keep it on. In Matthew chapter 14, we see the story of Jesus walking on the water with Peter. I believe this is a great story. In chapter 14, I'll start off with verse 24. It says, but the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, be of good cheer. It is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. You just got to have faith. If you have faith, You know, the storm might be going on, but Peter still said, you know what? I've got faith. I'll walk on the water. But then a little bit later on it says, but when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid and beginning to sink, and he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? You know, I know it's hard. Sometimes you're going to doubt. You're going to lose your faith. You'll see everything going on around you and just think, God, I can't make it through. But then just when you're at your lowest point, I'm telling you, God is going to reach out his hand, pull you up from the water. You're going to feel free. You're going to feel more alive than you ever have in your whole life. I tell you what, there ain't nothing in the world that's better than Jesus, and there ain't no place I'd rather be in the church. Jesus. And you know, I know I'm talking quick, and I'm about to close, but I'd like to tell you all a story of faith in my life. Lots of faith. It hasn't always been this way with me. I haven't always, been where I'm at right now. I'll admit the past couple of years have been rough. But, there's a story behind it. I might be throwing my whole soul out there at you, knowing my whole secrets, but I feel like it's the right thing to do because it might touch somebody. I was split between preaching this, and I thought about preaching the story of the modern day prodigal son. And I might just throw that in there. Whenever I was a kid, I grew up going to church my whole life. Mom, Dad, grew up in church. I honestly couldn't ask for two better parents. Couldn't. But then somewhere along the line, I got bitter. Stuff happened at a church that I wasn't happy with, but I let that affect me. I let it completely affect my whole outlook on life. I grew so bitter that I didn't want anything to do with church. I didn't want anything to do with God. I just let that whole thing just drag me down. And, I'd go to church, and my parents would make me go, practically beg me to go sometimes. And, I'd go, and I'd just go through the motions. I wasn't getting anything out of it. And, they'd be praying and going along, and I hit about 17 years old, and we got a foreign exchange student from Uruguay, and it's a whole different world down there. And I'll tell you, I went into some of the darkest times of my life. I backslid, completely went out of the church, but I was still going, too. I got caught up in the whole drinking, the party scene. Everyone gets tested. I backslid like I never thought I would. I found myself lower than I ever thought possible. When I was about 18 or 19, I went to a party. And at that party, it was for another friend from a different country, and we went, and I said, okay, I'll go. I know they're going to be drinking, but nothing's going to happen. Sure enough, they talked me into it, and I just remember I had way too much, and I blacked out, and I remember seeing a white light. And when I saw that light, I said, Jesus, Jesus. And I ran home. I called my mom, and I confessed my sins. I told them, I swore I was going to get it right. But then you know what? I fell back down again. A couple of years later, not too long ago, it was sometime last year, I was going through some more dark times, and Mike was praying for me. I'll tell you what, thank God for people that pray. Prayer really works. And I was going, and I went to this party, and again, saying, okay, I'm not going to drink. This is it. Well, sure enough, talked me into drinking. And everyone that asks me why I don't party, why I changed, this is the story I tell them. I was going down the road. I shouldn't have been driving in the first place. It's about 1 a.m. Once again, and I'm not proud of this. I'm just telling you all this to show you what God can deliver you from. I was driving down the road, and I blacked out. I didn't know what was going on. When I came to, I had crossed
both lanes of traffic, driving in the ditch. If I didn't have that truck, I'd probably be dead. There could have been telephone poles I could have hit, other cars. But when I crossed over, I remember seeing that light again. And the only thing I could yell was Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I came to and I drove home and I made up my mind that night that I was going to get right. I made up my mind. You know, it don't matter how far down you are. He's always going to lift you up. It don't matter how far back you've gone. He's always there for you. He's always been there for me. And even when I was back in church, you've attested to this not too long ago. New Year's Day, I was headed home. And it was about 9 o'clock at night. We're coming down. The snow it was a terrible storm. And I just left Pastor's house from dropping Brianna and Tanner right there off. And anyway, I made it about a mile past the road. I had my truck and four-wheel drive and everything, thinking I'm going to be all right. Going slow, doing everything they tell you to. Then I started going this way. My truck just slid. Now, I was going slow, too, but my truck slid this way and slid back and spun. By the time I was headed for this ditch, which I thought it was a ditch, I was headed back from the way I came, slid sideways, and it ended up being about a 12, 13-foot ravine sideways. I don't know about you, but I don't think trucks go sideways down a ravine and not roll unless, God's with you. I remember as I'm going to that ditch, once again, who did I turn to? I called on Jesus, my friend. I just said, Jesus, 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 and I swear, it's almost like something just picked me up and just sat me down at the bottom of that ditch. And I remember calling you to come pick me up and not thinking, is there any way he's going to be able to get me out of here? What's wrong with my truck? Not a thing wrong with it, nothing wrong with me, and I'm still standing here today. I'll tell you what, though, when it really boils down to it, as I close, and if the musicians want to come, I just got one last thing to say. Have faith in Him, because He has faith in you. Thank you.